It's rough out here on these mystical streets, especially Carnival Row. Amazon Prime's Carnival Row, Season 1 review. Hey Twisted people, it's your Twisted Girl here, and today I am doing a Season 1 review, spoiler-free, of Amazon Prime's new show, Carnival Row. A human detective and a fairy rekindle a dangerous affair in a Victorian fantasy world, while a string of murders by an unimaginable monster collapses the city's uneasy peace. Carnival Row is a dark fantasy with interesting storytelling and world building, but often suffers from uneven pacing and scattered plot focus. World building. I really enjoyed the fantastical yet gritty aesthetic that they had going on. They built a world where it's like, first of all, it's in the Victorian era, so it's the past, but not our past, because it's a different world probably with, like, mystical creatures. But they do it in a way that it's like rooted in the reality that we've seen in more like realistic portrayals of the Victorian era. But within that is the fantastical thing of fairies and, people with horns on their heads and monsters and witches and things like that. So it's a good mesh, and I think it did well in explaining the world and how that works. I think they did that well enough. They do that actually in the very beginning. So they let you know what the rules are of this universe that you're in or that you're entering. And so I think it actually works really well, because I like when dark fantasy can have a little bit of reality in it, because it makes it resonates a little bit more than it's just like, oh, it's all this magic. And it kind of feels like it can be hard to, I don't want to say relate to, but it can be hard to get into for some people, because it's such a thing with magic that it's so removed from what we think of our reality. So to see them kind of interplay that in a more realistic sense, I think it grounded the fantasy to be more approachable for newcomers and people also who love dark fantasy too. Diversity. I wasn't expecting it, but it's actually a very diverse show. Has a lot of people of color in various speaking parts and significant speaking parts. They're not just like red shirts, if you know what I mean. If you watch Star Trek, when it comes to, this person's going to die as soon as they come on. No, it wasn't that. The people of color had significant roles, and I enjoyed that because, one of the things when it comes to displaying the past, depending on who's telling the story, is that things get real white sometimes. Let's just, call a spade a spade. We're all adults here, probably, if you're watching this. And there's a whitewashing of history, as though certain races just now came into existence, or that races even that were different from each other interacted. And we know, if you know history, and if you love history, like I love history, or even if you don't, if you just read a book, you know that that's not the case, that races and ethnicities and different people from different countries have been mixing and mingling for a very long time now, super long time. And that's why we have some of the history that we do, because of wars, because of alliances with different types of people. And so sometimes when you have these shows that, for whatever reason, they're back in the past, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's that the creator's worldview, that everything was just white. Horror. I really appreciated the gore in this series. I think if you're a horror fan, you will also enjoy this series and some of the moments of this series, because it doesn't shy away from monsters and horror. Because, sometimes, as you know here, I cover dark fantasy and horror shows and films and things of that nature and subjects. And so I like both of them, but I know for some people, depending on horror or dark fantasy, they lean towards one or the other. And I think this series actually did a very good mesh of the two. There are some very scary moments in here, the whole dark alley situation. What's that monster? People getting attacked. There's a few jump scares. And so I think it did a really good job of showing that, along with the darker fantasy of fairies and unicorns and things like that. Actually, I don't think there was a unicorn, but there were people with horns in there. Messaging and theme. Not gonna get on my soapbox, and I know there are some people who like to watch entertainment and think that it's apolitical, although I don't think anything is apolitical. It's all, pushing some sort of messaging, whether it's the status quo or whether it's something against the status quo. And I think this show is no different. There's a lot of themes that address immigration. There's a lot of themes that address the refugee situation that we're dealing with now, that it touches upon racism, it touches upon discrimination, it touches upon sexism, all things of that nature that come together to form this world. I mean, yes, they display it in a fantastical way when it comes to, it being fairies that are discriminated against, or people with horns that are discriminated against, or moving from a different land and then being treated hostile by the regular citizens, things like that. Very much similar to what we deal with today in this world. And I think the show definitely had a message in showing that. And I don't think it bludgeons you over the head, but it's very overt. The whole idea of refugees seeking asylum, the discrimination, racism, classism that happens, it's very much there. It's a prominent thing. You will not be able to ignore that. So I think it's a pro. I love it, but I love that stuff because I love digging deeper into themes of horror and dark fantasy. So I think of that as a pro. Scattered plot. So there's sort of a mystery in this series, right? In the first season, yes, there's the overt thing of the relationship with the fairy and the human guy, and I'll get to that in a second. But there's also something brewing. There's like some monster killing people. There's other people killing people. There's political maneuverings. There's a lot. And I don't think the show did the best job of, I'm not going to say balance, because there's no such thing as total balance. With any plot line, some plot lines are going to get more focused than other plot lines. That's not what I'm expecting. What I'm expecting is, or what I would hope for, I should say, is when you do cover a plot, that you pick the ones that you're at least going to try to develop as best you can, given whatever time you give it. And I feel like this show tried to tackle way more things than it probably had the capacity to do. I mean, it's only 8 episodes. It's not even a 10-episode season. It's 8 episodes. And so in that 8 episodes, it tries to cover a lot. Political maneuverings, a love affair, other love affairs, all types of stuff. And so some stuff gets more attention than others, which is expected. But when the other things do get time, because they're so kind of, I don't know, they just feel a little detached from everything else. I think, especially in the beginning, when you don't know how it connects to anything, you're going to be wondering, why is this happening on screen? Romantic plot lines. Now, if you've seen my other reviews of other shows and films, you know I am a shipper. And that meaning, for those of you who are not shippers, I really like romance in horror and dark fantasy. I think it helps add the human element of emotion and stakes when it comes to a show, right? And so I wanted to like the central relationship, and I think I did. I didn't hate it. Now, the only reason why it's under the con is that I felt like they could have done a better job of developing that. We got the backstory of them. I'm not even going to say it's the chemistry between the actors. I thought they had chemistry. I didn't think it was bad chemistry. I just didn't think it was as epic as the show wants you to think it is. Oversexed. Now I know what you're thinking. Who doesn't want a good lovemaking scene when it comes to dark fantasy and stuff like that? It could be sensual. It could be nice. And I'm not a prude. I am not someone who thinks you can't have, like, sex scenes in a show. I just think the way they play some of these sex scenes, it felt, I'm not going to say contrived. Maybe a little contrived. It felt like they were really trying to, like, remind you this is an adult fantasy show. This is, like, so adult. It's so adult, we're going to show you some breast and some butt and some, like, sex being had. And it was, and some of these scenes would last way longer than they needed to. Like, for 5 minutes, you'd be seeing someone humping on somebody. And it'd just be like, okay, we get it. Can we get a fade out, a fade to black, a switch off? I don't know. It's fine. It looks pretty, I guess, in some regards. And in other regards, it was just like, well, what's the point? Like, I don't know. I just felt like it was times when it was just like, let's remind you this is an adult show and we can do this because it's like a streaming channel. I don't know. I just thought it was a little unnecessary. None of those scenes really added to anything. I felt like I could have gotten an epic kiss, and I probably would have conveyed the same kind of emotion for the plot line. or we could have gotten a fade out or them finishing up instead of a full scene of it. Attempted sexual assault, hate speech. So is Carnival Row Twisted approved? Yes, I do think this show is Twisted approved. It's not wonderful, it's not super great, I'm not like in love with it, but I think it has really strong potential. I think season 1 had some very strong moments. I think there's a really good premise there. I think there's so many ways they can go about with the story they're trying to tell, and hopefully they get a chance to do that. I think it was approved or renewed for season 2. I just think it wasn't as good as it could have been. Okay, y'all, so that is my season 1 review of Carnival Row. Those were my pros, those were my cons. It is Twisted approved. I think it's decent enough to give it a good shot if you like dark fantasy. Do you agree? Have you watched Carnival Row? Do you agree with my pros and my cons? Do you think that this show might be slightly contrived, oversexed? Let me know. Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. And also, be sure to subscribe so that you're the first to know when I post my videos. Thanks for watching.